And BBC One Scotland at 10 o'clock. The news with Clive Myrie. And reporting Scotland with Laura Goodwin.
At 10, after losing their privacy case against the Daily Mail, Prince Harry and 6 other claimants must find millions in costs. The judge said the allegations were unreasonable to a high degree, ordering an initial payment of more than £9 million. It comes amid speculation Meghan Markle is returning to acting with a role in a Netflix drama. A warning for young children, the over 65s and those in poor health. Avoid undercooked eggs when eating out. At least 15 people are dead after a Russian drone attack in broad daylight on a shopping centre in central Ukraine. And the challenge of finding petrol in Moscow as the impact of the Ukraine war hits home.
The petrol pumps are actually 300 metres or so down the road. The drivers are saying that it's taking them about 2.5 hours to get to the front of the queue.
And it's a comfortable victory for Arsenal against Coventry in the first game of the new Premier League season.
On Reporting Scotland, a banned driver who caused the death of a man after crashing into his garden has been jailed for 13.5 years. And 2 Rangers fans are banned from every football ground in the UK following Old Firm disorder.
Hello to you. Prince Harry, Elton John and 5 other high-profile claimants are counting the cost tonight of losing their legal action against the publisher of the Daily Mail, alleging an invasion of privacy. A judge has now ordered them to make an initial payment of more than £9 million after failing to prove claims that journalists used unlawful information gathering to get stories. Daniela Ralph is here. One assumes the Duke can afford this hefty legal bill. Sure. All right, Daniela, thank you. Daniela Ralph, our senior royal correspondent. Now, the Food Standards Agency is warning young children, people over 65, or those suffering from underlying health conditions to avoid undercooked eggs when eating out. It follows a salmonella outbreak largely affecting England. The agency is stressing it's not linked to British eggs, which are safe to eat, but most probably imported ones. Here's Hugh Pym. 15 people are reported to have been killed and 130 injured in a Russian attack on a shopping centre in central Ukraine. President Zelensky said there were 2 separate strikes on the building, calling that absolutely cynical and despicable. Well, Dan Johnson is live in Kiev with the latest. Just bring us up to date, Dan. All right, Dan, thank you. Dan Johnson live in Kiev. And in Russia, repeated Ukrainian drone attacks on oil and gas supplies are having a real and visible impact, with long queues at the petrol pumps and fuel shortages. It's particularly bad in the capital, Moscow, where drivers are waiting for hours to fill their cars. Attacking energy infrastructure is an important tactic for both sides. The Met Office is warning that the El Niño weather phenomenon, which is developing in the Pacific Ocean, is said to be the strongest in more than a century, triggering intense storms, winds and rainfall across the UK this autumn. It also says it's very likely that globally, next year will be the hottest on record when the impact of El Niño combines with the effects of human-induced climate change. Justin Rolat has that story. Newsnight's coming up over on BBC Two shortly. Here's Lucy Hockings. Hello.
Hi, Clive. Well, it's not just his ballroom that President Trump has been thinking about. He has declared what he calls an economic D-Day against Iran. Will it break the deadlock in the conflict? Well, we're going to talk to a long-time close friend of Donald Trump. Newsnight starts at 10:30 on BBC Two, globally on BBC News and on iPlayer.
Thank you, Lucy. Now, the Prime Minister has pledged to consult the victims and survivors of terrorism on the creation of a permanent national memorial. It comes on the first ever National Day remembering the victims and survivors of terrorism. The government says the aim is to recognise all those who were affected, including witnesses and the emergency services. A 17-year-old boy has died after being shot in the chest during clashes with Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. England have comprehensively beaten Pakistan on the third day of the first test at Headingley. The visitors were all out for 135 in their second innings, giving England victory by an innings and 103 runs. Here's Tom Grundy. And one of the most famous footballs in history is up for auction in America. It's the one from the World Cup in 1986, where Diego Maradona scored both the controversial Hand of God goal and the so-called Goal of the Century against England. With a day to go in the auction, bidding has reached nearly £2 million. Time for the weather news now, and Stav's here. Hi there.
Hi there, Clive. Thank you very much. Good evening to you. We've seen some much needed showers over the last couple of days, but we've got high pressure building back in. So I think Tuesday, another fine day. Wednesday onwards, though, we'll see some very much needed rain. That's it from me, Clive.
All right, Stav, thank you. Stav Danaeus there. That's it. Now, it's time for the news where you are. Have a peaceful night.
Good evening. A disqualified driver who killed a great-grandfather after crashing a stolen sports car into his garden has been jailed for 13 and a half years. Fraser Garden killed John Bell in Broughty Ferry near Dundee in April. Judge Lord Braid told the 55-year-old he had stolen the life of a man in a place that should have been his sanctuary. Joanne Macaulay reports. A 23-year-old man has been arrested following an emergency incident involving a Calmac ferry in Ayrshire. It follows a security threat made by a person who'd been rescued from the water off Ardrossan earlier this evening. The MV Caledonian Isles was evacuated and searched. Passengers have since been allowed back to get their vehicles from the vessel. All remaining sailings from Ardrossan were cancelled tonight. A number of sailings tomorrow morning are also disrupted. NHS Grampians say they are committed to restoring paediatric surgery services at Dr Gray's Hospital in Elgin as quickly as possible, provided safety assurances are met. Earlier this week, all planned paediatric surgery at the hospital was suspended, and it was also revealed emergency surgery was paused in June, but the public was not informed. Daniel Thompson's son was due to have emergency surgery for hearing loss this coming Monday, but she found out it was pulled 2 weeks ago.
My child who was supposed to be, my 11-year-old who's supposed to be having a surgery on Monday, it's just been completely pulled from us. And I don't know where to go from here. At this point, I'm begging for my son to have the surgery because he can't even hear his teachers at school. Like, it's affecting him on the daily basis.
2 Rangers fans have been banned from every football ground in the UK for 5 years for participating in disorder at an Old Firm game. The men aged 19 and 21 were captured on video during chaotic scenes at the Scottish Cup quarter-final in March. Our sports news correspondent Chris McLaughlin has more. A body has been recovered in the search for a man who it's thought fell overboard from a cruise ship in the North Sea off the east coast of Scotland. The man was reported missing at just after 8:30 this morning by the captain of the MS Ambition, about 36 nautical miles from Arbroath. The High Court trial of former world snooker champion Graham Dott has heard closing speeches from both the prosecution and the defence. The 49-year-old is accused of lewd and libidinous behaviour towards 2 children between 1993 and 2010. The prosecutor said the court had heard clear, detailed and compelling evidence from both complainers. The defence asked the jury not to accept either accuser as credible or reliable. Graham Dott denies the charges against him. People over 65, pregnant women, children under 5 and those with underlying health conditions are being warned not to have undercooked or runny eggs when they're eating out. It comes after a UK health security agency warned of a salmonella outbreak across Britain. 1 person has died and hundreds have fallen ill. There have been 6 cases in Scotland. Time now for the weather with Christine.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening to you. Well, a decent end to the day across much of the country, and indeed for many a dry night will follow with clear spells. We'll have temperatures on the rise again. It's looking dry across the country with spells of sunshine. That's the forecast, Laura.
Christine, thank you. The team will be back with updates throughout the weekend, but from everyone on the Late team, have a great weekend. Good night.